Hello everyone, Brian Jennings, the psychic scientist. This channel exists as a method of processing my sick psychological relationship with Quentin Tarantino. I wrote Quentin a series of letters about playing the lead in the movie Critic, which set into motion a series of events that led to him first canceling the film and ultimately led to where we are now. After failing to bend to his psychic whim at a screening of Jackie Brown last year at De Niro Con, he and the people around him entered into a covenant to compel me to madness, right? To compel me to suicide, right? To try to compel me to die. Right? So that he could have my scene for free and never have to admit that there's an actor who didn't bend to his psychic whim. So we're talking about it every day because it's getting to a dangerous fever pitch. And there's not really any other way to describe it. That Quentin descended into palpable evil in April. And so I was striving to come clean then, and I took everything down, and I said, no, we're good, right? You just go anywhere else. Just leave me the fuck alone, right? And so after about a week, he said, I want you to sue. And now that hasn't gone as fast as he would like, he has begun torturing me again. And so my concern now, right, is that I was doing my best to move on with my life, right? That's, right, okay, sure, initiation, bullshit, like whatever, and we'll talk more on that coming up. But he has his standards, right, and it's his movie, right? Like Tribeca is my fault, right? The reason that I'm not already announced as the movie critic is my fault. It's not Quentin's fault, per his standards, right? I saw us as equals. Right? He didn't want to treat me as an equal, and so I opted out. I chose my side, right? But in attempting to move on, however long ago, when he was at Cannes, right? Once upon a time at Cannes, the Hollywood Reporter reported, right? While he was fucking doing his retrospective of Red Canyon and whatever that film was, the other one, right? He paid people to make my life miserable. Right? And so now, right, what does that have to do with now? Right? Like, what am I talking about? Right? He's getting the Vanguard Life Achievement Award from the Burbank International Film Festival at the end of September, just a few months from now. Right? And so, if this thing remains occulted, right, if it's just me and him in this legendary, right, psychic magic siege, right, then when he puts on his monkey suit and does his career retrospective with the Hollywood Reporter's Scott Feinberg, right? He's going to pay people to make my life miserable. I have no choice but to assume that. On top of the baseline understanding that, he's done everything to compel me to madness and suicide. There's no other way to interpret it, right? So, we got a lot to cover. I have a novel, I've written a novelization of my experiences, but we're going to touch on the nature of reality. I've touched on it any number of times on this channel, but, right, in the beginning, there was darkness, right, and the world was void and without form, right? So, Plato's allegory of the cave alleges that a life that is lived without the lens of philosophy is perceived as though chained inside of a cave, and all of the things that you see are shadows cast upon the wall of the cave, right? From a fire illuminated out of sight behind you. And when the adept liberates himself from the shackles of his ignorance and comes out of the cave, right, and sees the world for what it is, sees the true reality, right? When he descends back down into his cave, the cave where his brothers and sisters all live, and he says, oh no, this isn't the way, this isn't the truth, this isn't the life, right? They all say, oh, how unfortunate, he's lost his mind, right? Wisdom appears as madness to the uninitiated. So I say a number of things. I have a number of tenets as far as my worldview, right? That Platonic forms, right, is the true philosophy, right? It is infallible. It is the philosophy of Walter Russell as well. That all of life emerges as a psychic reflex, as a mental concept from the realm of idea, which always remains as idea, right? The idea of a tree is never the tree, right? Right? All things exist in a twofold manifold, right? That embedded within every cubic centimeter of space, however big, however small, all stratas, all convocations, right, is a conscious field, a conscious resonance, which is not a creature, it has no personality, right? It is a thing. It is not no thing, right? Commonly referred to as deity, as God, right? Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, right? Embedding within that, right, it's a twofold manifold, is the structural skeleton for all of manifested life, which is an infinite complex of nested polyhedra. This is one example. My celestial vision board behind me is a myriad of other examples. All of these things are all nested inside of each other, right? And it's through the breathing of the conscious field, right? If I take this into my hand and I explain, right, that the conscious awareness seeks to express the dignity of this, though through transgression, corrupting it through motion into a shadow of what its idealized form is. And so it exerts pressure upon it, right? And the specific angle or angles, angels or angels, right? The dihedral of the expression of the conscious field upon this infinitely dense complex of quantum waveform probability electric potential, right? Is a reflection of what it projects out as a corpuscular manifested shadow, right? So if we close this compound of 40 tetrahedra in a sphere, right, and we say, I cast a circle around it, and say, oh, that's a great circle, right? Each of those each great circle, which there's an infinite complex of, right, represents a degree of the Almighty's love exerting pressure upon the subatomic structural scaffolding, right? That this is how everything comes into the world, right? So, what does this have to do with science, right? What does this have to do with physics, the standard model, right? In the Big Bang model of creation, scientists all say, they're all in agreement here, that within 1/100 millionth of a second, right, the four primary stabilizing forces in creation emerge, which are the strong and weak nuclear force, right, relativity, quantum mechanics, and electromagnetism, right? So strong and weak is one thing, right? Relativity, quantum mechanics, electromagnetism, right? So if we take this painting here that I have here, right, and we say, okay, four principal powers, exponential, one squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 1/100 millionth of a second. Okay. So this painting, right, has 10 circles inside of one circle. And it's referred to in certain circles as the Gra arrangement, as the original tree of life, or the 10 Sephiroth tree of the tree of life. Right? And it's inherently obvious this must be the first expression of it, right? Because it's one circle, right? And so, right, if we say, okay, all things are an emanation from a divine intellectual origin, right? Within 100 millionth of a second, we have these four principal powers in nature, right? So what is it? What do they say in the Sefer Yetzirah, right? The Book of Formation, right? The 32 paths of wisdom, right? 10 Sephirah out of nothing, right? 22 foundational letters, right? So if we take the first three Sephiroth of the Tree of Life, the first three emanations of deity, God the Father, with Ein Sof being above it, right? Pure abstraction, right? And we say Kether, Chokmah, Binah, right? Crown, wisdom, and understanding, right? And through the two of them, right, they coagulate to create Dath, intellection, right? Which is not a Sephiroth, it's a Sephirah. It's an emergence of through the two, right? It's not from God directly, right? So we have the pillar of mercy, we have the pillar of severity, right? If we take this painting and we deconstruct it just a little bit, right? All of the yellow that you see here, these are not like arbitrary lines on this painting, right? So this painting, right, has a circumference in blue, right? And it's divided into 12, right? 12 ages of the zodiac, right? And so each of these yellow lines is an arc that's cast over each of these 10 circles, right? Not over and under, just over, without any going inside of the 10, right? And so it's worth pointing out, right, if we're looking at this thing, right, that if you divide a circle, right, so what I'm saying right now, right, is that, and I mentioned this in other videos, right, that the structure of the Hebrew alphabet, right, as well as the 10 emanations of the Almighty, right, derive from Moses, from these wise Kabbalistic rabbi men, right, dissecting the subdivision of the circle, right? This is unequivocal, right? This logic is infallible, right? It's flawless, and it's not in any other books, right? And so what do I mean when I say that? That when you divide a circle, right, it goes 1, right, 10 Sephirah out of nothing, right? A circle is the ultimate expression, symbol of nothing, right? 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, etc., etc., right? And so, if you divide a circle into 2, then you have nothing, right? But you can't put anything else in it, right? It's only when you divide it into 4 that you can have 3 below it, 3 above it, right? Right? And so what is that? Like, what is that? Right, the four primary principal powers, 1/100 millionth of a second, right? Electromagnetism, quantum mechanics, relativity, right? And if you do 8, right, if you do the next one, right, and you have 8 running down here, and you have 7 on one side, 7 on the other, that's 22. 7 plus 7 is 14, plus 8 is 22. 10 Sephirah out of nothing, 22 foundational letters, the 32 paths of wisdom. Right? So what the fuck am I talking about right now, right? So what I'm saying, right, is that we're all saying the same thing, right? David Berlinski mentions, though I despise him now, in his late masterwork, Science After Babel, that there is a guy, his name's Albertus Magnus, and I've read some of his stuff. He's a very sage, wise man, very close to God, right? But he's considering, right? He's considering what's like a, oh gosh, like a, an angel has a thought, right? And he wants to tell another angel what the thought is, but like the one angel's in Rome and the other one's in England, and so how do they? Gosh, I don't know, So, and then it hits him like, oh, an angel has a thought, and in that exact instant, every other angel has the same thought. Right? My point is that we're all saying the same thing. Right? That Albertus Magnus was discussing quantum entanglement in the 13th century. Right? That the 10 Sephiroth of the Kabbalah, right? The 10 emanations of deity, right? Begin, right? Their descent out of Ein Sof, like all the way to Malkuth Dominion, right? Through, right? The four principal powers that operate the universe in physics, right? That it's all the same thing, that we're all saying the same thing, right? That life has an intellectual origin, right? That God the Father is an abstract intellectual notion which exists perpetually in a state of rest, right? All throughout every cubic centimeter of space, right? And he exerts his knowing upon the quantum manifold of electric probability potential as pressure, which mutates the static perfection of the hologram, right, into a corpuscular, physical, measurable shadow, right? This resolves the trouble with measurement. Oh gosh, like what is light? Like how does it work? It's like when we're looking at it, it's like a photon, but when we're not looking at it, it's smeared out everywhere, right? You get it? Right? What does this have to do with Quentin Tarantino? Right? All instances of clairvoyance, right? Telepathy, psychokinesis, thaumaturgy, remote viewing, is the mind of the adept tapping into the non-locality of the conscious field which permeates all of space. And through quantum entanglement, right, the psychic aperture is opened, right? And the adept is allowed to see disparate locales through harmonizing, right, the atomic structure of their brain, right, with the atomic structure of the locale or person they seek to observe, vivify, or destroy. Right? So, that's what's been occurring. Nothing else has ever been occurring. Forever. Right? So I've written a novel about my experiences. I'm going to read just a few pages because I went on longer than I wanted to. And I still have something else that I have to discuss, but I'll pick up where I left off. Building a coven. It will be a long night, I'm sure. Today has been a lot. Tonight as well. Everything is chaotic in my mind. A fever dream. An Eastern European douchebag slanders me in Serbian or some such as he walks by me. He knows nothing. He wanted to judge me sitting on the concrete sidewalk on the side of this truck stop within a brick wall, supporting my back and my bent knees, allowing my right thigh to support the left half of my notebook. A man stops on my left, says hi, and turns his back. Indian, likely. Older gentleman. And I take it for what it is. A sign of trust. The reptiles are out, and the night is young. Security approaches. A really nice black lady who gave me her blessing as best as she could, called me baby, and asked me, how long will you be? And when I told her, I don't know, she said, you ain't bothering nobody, but if Memphis police come, just get up and come into the building to mitigate loitering accusations. Help me help you, she says. And I assure her that I will not betray her kindness, because she works with the police, I know, and it will look bad on her, which I understand. I appreciate her being polite and sincere, like Lisa and Hazel. Willow doesn't know how to be either of those things, or, it would appear, anything other than a whore. She blasphemes, saying it fucking cuts deep. Takes the Lord's name in vain as easily as she fucks anything that blinks in her vicinity. She is a rite of passage, I'm guessing. Something, someone, that everyone uses and throws away. And now I see both parties in each transaction were privy to abuse. Quid pro quo. He gets pussy, she steals his secrets, his secret desires and dreams and ambitions and fears, and every time until now, she operated with diplomatic immunity. I'm the reckoning. My fear waxes. This is a dangerous place. And though I have nothing of value, I have a bright light which any cosmic vampire will immediately latch onto and attempt to steal, as with Willow. I stood in the light near the northeastern entrance and stuck my thumb out for over an hour, only seeing maybe a dozen semis and as many cars, before deciding to come over here and write. And was blessed by the same security guard with a bunch of hot food off the line because they were going to throw it away. Small victories as the fog settles in the air. It is a thickening, not soup, not cloudy, a mist of vapors. Willow uses music, or she thinks she does, as a weapon, and again I hear Alice Locke. The thought of her singing loud and completely tone-deaf is quite humorous to consider. Perhaps she has talents beyond occult mentalism and sex. However, I do not know what they are. That is to say, no, she is devoid of passion or skill of any merit, and I know she is there in her ivory tower, contemplating these arduous considerations as Atlas supports the world. Gosh, what a complicated, nuanced circumstance. Love the man you forged an immaculate psychic connection with, who wants nothing other than to support you and help you, or betray that sincerity and devotion he has proven 1,000 times over to continue being the town bicycle. I don't know. This man doesn't care how many Eskimo brothers he has, not a whit. But maybe never loving anyone genuinely is somehow better? The logic is ridiculous. Adolescent at best, at worst, high evil. It is sadistic, masochistic, pain for the sake of itself. I'll eat some more. I did the last of my subutex to be done with it. It has affected me. I am cross-eyed. It is very difficult to write. I am tired, very much so, but afraid to close my eyes. My first wish is after my sanity. Earlier I said she'll never respect me until I make her miscarry. Alistair began pleading, and several of us began sobbing. She said, I know you would never consciously do that. And she's right. Some minutes later, Willow, with her hand over her womb, asked, Can he really make me miscarry? To which Alistair replies, Probably. We've only just barely opened the door. Each day he gets a little stronger, more aware, more powerful. She writes on a piece of paper, wondering if I'll ever forgive her. Alistair replies, He'll forgive you. And Annabella says, You have to beg for forgiveness and take the first step in the right direction. To which I reply, a simple text that reads, Hi, it's Willow. That's all. No grand gestures. No vapid Hollywood bullshit. Simple, loving, sincere. I am spiraling in a maelstrom, a quagmire of psychology, stiltings. All my second guessing and doubting myself stems from wanting her to be happy, and wanting her to love me, to let me feel that feeling always. I've spent the last 8 years, going on 9, completely above desire, and true, my fear was unfounded. It still was a leap of faith. I fell in love with her. Weighing the merit of the situation, I believed her honest because of my appreciation of her father, so I relented with an open heart to carve a path to reconciliation through love. And in reply, she immolated me in humiliation until all that was left was to piss on my corpse. Now there is nothing left to do. Perhaps she continues torturing me. I'll say it again. I can't control what they do, but it's just more of the same. Base, Freudian, reductionist, materialistic, atheistic categorization. Pure fucking tack. She is incapable of flaws because, in order to be flawed, you have to have some merit or metal which can be corrupted, tarnished, or damaged in some way. But she is as empty as the Kansas prairie. Her psychic horizon is a flat, two-dimensional piece of paper which cannot be folded or bent or written upon. It exists. Nothing more. I'll stop there. It's a novelization of my experiences with Quentin Tarantino on the psychic frontier. Right? So everything that you saw, that you heard me reading right there, right, was me on the street outside of a truck stop in Memphis, right, trusting that Quentin was telling me the truth, right, about a daughter, about like Hamlet, about like all of it, right? And again, right, it's all a conspiracy to compel me to walk out into traffic, to jump off of an overpass, right? There's no other way to interpret it. I can't stress this enough, right? That he didn't do all of this for the two of us to exist 3,000 miles apart for the last 20 years of his life. And that brings me to the Vanguard, right? That brings me to that Lifetime Achievement Award that he's receiving, right? Right? And so I looked you up. I looked you all up. And I know that all of you are ignorant, more or less. Ignorant as sin. What are your names? Doesn't matter. Anna. That's your first name. You're the president. Right? What's that? That's you, isn't it? Australian. Nice. Real tall. Got that slave energy. Real grateful lover, I'm sure. So pretty, so fine. Right? I know that you didn't say, oh, let's award this guy this award with any sort of understanding of what's occurring now between the two of us. Right? That you thought that he just canceled his film because he's like a peculiar artist. And while that's true, on a fundamental level, right? On a more fundamental level, right? He hasn't made that movie because he's in a disgusting psychic siege with me, right? And this is me, right? Where do you think I got that from? Right? Right there, in that picture, right? Right? These tactics that he does to me, right? I'll swallow your soul just as easy. Right? Go ahead. Ask Quentin to make you come with his mind. I could do it, but we're too connected. I'd make someone else come. Right? My point is that you're in the middle of something right now. Right? I don't care what you do. I see that you have a little boy, but Quentin has children too, so that doesn't absolve you from being a fucking cunt if you so choose. Right? My point is that, right? Right? Everything that he does is in relation to me. Right? Every time that you speak to him, right? Then boom, I'm right there at the forefront of his mind. Right? And if you allow our condition to persist all the way to your award event, right? Then you are signing off on him paying people to torture me while he's having a good old time. Right? That's what I'm telling you right now, right? You can believe he's bullshit, right? You can let him look you in the eye and say, oh gosh, I have no idea what he's talking about. And that's all fine and fucking dandy, right? But what I'm telling you right now, right, is that 130,000 words doesn't emerge out of madness. That's not how literature works. That's not how writing works, right? Right? And I'll possess your mind. I'll crawl into your mind because that's what you're into, because you're into Quentin Tarantino as little or as much as I want, right? Because he seems to think that he can be evil and do disgusting, base, savagely evil things to me whenever he wants. I don't want to play this game, right? I don't want to possess your soul. I don't want to steal your soul with my mind. But I can. Every single one of you on that fucking board. Just like Quentin can. So, right? Uplift your soul to God. See what's good in your life. Know that life is not an accident. Like, comment, subscribe, share. God bless.